Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And going into Rostermania, OpTic Texas are a key team to keep an eye on. Shotzzy and aBeZy both are free agents to our understanding and could decide to leave OpTic if they wanted to. However, unlikely that does indeed seem. But also could Scump be looking at players like TJHaLy or Attach that have made the transition from SMG to Flex and think that could be also in Scump's future as well. And what could that mean for the future of this Texas lineup? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to discuss today. There's so much happening right now in Rostermania. Wanted to mention this as well actually, just in regard to the upcoming title, because there's this Marina Bay Singapore Grand Prix map that's coming out for Modern Warfare 2, and I thought it was an interesting breakdown here that Nick does, just kind of comparing what this map looks like from the screenshots we currently have to previous games, really, because this map, honestly, from the screenshots we have, does seem a bit more like a Treyarch style map. Like right here he's comparing this screenshot to, for example, Express from back in the Black Ops 2 days. We got this remastered, of course, for Black Ops Cold War. But yeah, some of the design features here do look more similar to what you might usually see in a Treyarch game. And arguably, it's the colors as well that make a difference here, because often Infinity Ward games are very dark and gloomy and don't look at all like this. And yeah, just some of the kind of screenshots here and the designs that are being seen look a bit more Treyarch-esque than what Infinity Ward typically produce. Like, I mean, this screenshot especially looks rather Treyarch map-esque. So, like, who knows what they're going to come up with, but I thought it was rather exciting just to see that some of these map design ideas like that have been kind of noticed here, and also just that the map layout in general, the way it looks and the aesthetics look less like Modern Warfare 2019, which hopefully can only be a good thing for how this game is actually going to play from a competitive perspective. I suppose we shall see. Just wanted to mention some other teams' tournament earnings from, of course, the entire season. Los Angeles Thieves, they top the lot, as you might expect. 120 grand from champs, 200 grand, of course, for winning Major 4, 1.5 million winnings in total. Honestly, though, FaZe not too far behind. They still made 1.1 million this year, coming second at so many events. That's 120k each. Third at Major 4, 650k for champs, right? That is very impressive in FaZe. They still made over 1 million despite not winning an event this season, and weren't even that far behind Thieves, all things considered, usually, given the fact that usually the team that wins champs is far and away the top dogs. But OpTic made less than 500k, which might have been something of a surprise given the start of the season they had, of course, at Major 1, winning the entire thing for 200 grand. After that, 6th, 4th, 6th, and then back to 4th and 4th at the end of the season. So not the result they wanted. A very vintage OpTic season in a way. Start off very strong, fall off a bit, recover towards the end of the season. Of course, like the YaLy thing threw a wrench in the works, and I imagine that as a result of that, they'll just decide to run it back next season. But there might be some other complicating factors here for OpTic that might change up what their off-season looks like, because I think most people would expect, hands down, this team's going to stay together, and it more than likely will. But there are a couple of spanners that could go in the works here, especially if Shotzzy and aBeZy are free agents, as we indeed believe, and also potential of some role changes down the line, which might indicate how they're going to build their team going forward. Just wanted to touch real quick on the whole OpTic curse thing, right? Because, of course, this came out from the process where, you know, Envoy, of course, was super emotional after getting released from OpTic last season, and a difficult season they had, goes to Thieves, and, of course, wins the World Championship with, in my opinion, the finals MVP. And this was also, right, I thought was kind of interesting just on the topic of the OpTic curse, players that leave OpTic go on to win champs, because Formal, since kind of leaving the OpTic Chicago team, has gone on to do great things on the Halo side, of course. He's now playing Halo with the OpTic guys, and at least online, had an absolute dominant performance the other day to close out the NA Super. Not exactly sure when the next Halo tournament is going to be, or whenever even the World Championship is for Halo, but I thought it would be a kind of crazy storyline as well if Envoy goes on to win the COD World Championship, and then Formal goes to leave OpTic COD, goes to OpTic Halo, and wins the Halo World Championship. Like, that would be kind of another, maybe another item in the list of like, kind of OpTic curse members over the year, right? I thought that was interesting to note as well. But OpTic, they're going to take their time off, as Rambo says, planning a stream to recap the year and talk about everything from the season and give more light and detail into the Vanguard ways. If not tomorrow, then Thursday. Looking forward to chatting with you guys. So thought that was interesting to hear about. We'll see how this goes for Rambo as well, kind of describing the year and how things went, and I'm sure there's going to be some interesting insight there for what it was like behind the scenes in the team. They know this is a difficult season, and that's why I imagine they know the potential of this team. They won the event back at Major 1. It wasn't quite the season on the whole that they would have hoped it would be, but still, an event victory is an event victory at the end of the day. And Dashy's getting ready, of course, to relax on, well, Valorant for the near future, I imagine, until the new game comes out. But the big question could be, what might OpTic well do into this off season? And that's the thing. Last season, even after that OpTic Chicago team failed pretty miserably on actually achieving really anything at events, they failed to make any grand finals, I'm pretty sure, last season at OpTic Chicago. There was some questions going around. Should they change? Should they stick it out for one more year? Of course, their hand was kind of forced by the merger behind the scenes, right? OpTic coming together with Envy, Dallas, Empire, like Disappear, of course, and then it becomes OpTic OpTic Texas, it was going to be OpTic Dallas, but they changed it to, I guess, broaden the horizons to a certain extent. They really had no choice than to bring on Illy and Shotzzy, and I think that was an intelligent move, of course. So their hands were kind of forced in that sense. Whereas this season, if they don't want to change, they don't have to change, right? And of course, you're also going back into a Modern Warfare title, Modern Warfare 2022, where Shotzzy and Illy won the World Championship back in 2019 on what is probably going to be a rather similar game. So I think there's really no way that you want to get rid of them if you're OpTic. You definitely want to stick it out for one more year and see if there's potential in this team still to be the dominant force that it was meant to be when they built it, right? It was meant to be a dominant super team that it was briefly at the start of the year, but obviously didn't quite have the results from the middle of the season onwards for various reasons, you could argue. But this is definitely of note because Benji has put together the free agent tracker, and his understanding is, talking to the league, talking to various sources, that both Shotzzy and Illy are free agents. So I believe what might have happened here is Dallas Empire, maybe after year one, re-signs them to new deals for more money or something, and then OpTic effectively took over their contract after last season going into this year. So their 1+1s are at an end, and therefore they have to re-sign new deals going into Modern Warfare 2 if they want to stick around on the team. So technically, Shotzzy and Illy are free agents if they wanted to leave. So I think OpTic will want to keep them around, and would Shotzzy and Illy want to go elsewhere? I think there's no way that's really the case either. They, of course, enjoyed an OpTic. They like the chemistry of the team. Like, being on OpTic has its own benefits outside of just being a competitive team in the first place, and the only way that Shotzzy or Illy would want to leave is if a team like FaZe or if a team like Thieves, I suppose, gave them an offer, right? Which frankly isn't going to happen anyway, so I don't really see that being a viable strategy going forwards. The other part of this, though, is that Benji actually mentioned, and I'll share the clip right here, because he talks firstly about the fact that Shotzzy was incredibly underwhelming at Champs, and in fairness, the last few events of the season, but also the potential of a role change on the team that might not happen next year, but might happen down the line. We've seen other SMG players, kind of more traditional, slower, slay-heavy SMGs, as time has progressed, to actually decide to go more into the flex position. Could Scump be thinking, currently or even down the line, about going into the flex role and picking up another SMG on this team?
And at Champs, Scump had a .97, but Shotzzy really struggled. He actually had below a 9 KD. Definitely one of his worst events, I think, since probably the beginning of Modern Warfare. Taking a look at this, obviously, Ender and Shotzzy, I was able to confirm, are free agents in this upcoming offseason. I believe that's because they were coming from their Dallas Empire contracts. I expect them to re-sign. There'll obviously be teams who will be able to talk to them, and I already know that there are a couple of teams probably out there in the ether that are going to do it anyway. But I expect these guys to stay. I mean, there's no reason for them to leave OpTic. The general situation is still a little bit unclear to me from a sub standpoint, but if they want him back, they'll have him back. Prolude as a bench team option, I could see them maybe picking him back up as a sub, but they'll probably hold off a sec on that decision. And you got Rambo and Sender holding down from the coach position. I expect both those to come back. The option B for me that I could see them trying to do, again, if the navigation is a little about the Ender thing, we could say, well, what if you move Scump to the flex-ish role and you bring in another sub player? I look at this list of players and I struggle to really see amongst the free agents a player that I think is a great fit for their camp. So I don't know necessarily if this is a great option for them. It is a possible option. We would probably look at Seattle, right, and be like, what would it cost us to get Pred? It's probably a couple $1,000,000, so it's probably not doable. So again, I don't think it's a realistic option, but it is a route that they can go down. My personal guess is they're going to go with option A, though. They're going to stick it.
So Mutineers weren't afraid to kind of, throw some jabs OpTic's way. They tweet this out, OpTic lineup during matches, right? The goals like Mutineers at the end of the day failed to make the World Championship, so they were getting roasted in the replies, but they did generally have OpTic's number so far this season. What do you guys think about the possibility of Scump going onto a flex, right? Because of course, that would mean if Scump was to the flex, do you put Illy to the SMG? I don't really like that idea. Or do you say, well, look, what if we get another SMG on the team and put Illy to the bench or something? I don't think this is something they're going to do, certainly not this season, but I do think that if you're OpTic, you might think about in your head in terms of building your substitute bench, about having an SMG player on your sub bench just in case you want to do something like this and actually try it out if the team doesn't go as well as they hope it will going into the upcoming season. These are the KDs as well for Champs. Just wanted to mention because Shotzzy, if you look at his search and destroy, 24% first blood rate, 1.25 in search, Shotzzy had a 1.07 in control, but Shotzzy this weekend over 6 maps in hardpoint had a 0.65 KD. I don't know if that was the worst hardpoint KD of the tourney, but it probably was. And the crazy thing about this is actually that Scump had by far the highest engagements for 10 minutes, right? Scump had 53 engagements for 10 minutes in hardpoint. Shotzzy had 46 and was just dying all the time anyway. So that's honestly kind of crazy to even think about. He did have marginally more more hill time, but in terms of percentage of kills, he had barely any of his team's kills. So yeah, definitely in terms of Shotzzy's perspective on his LAN performance the last few tournaments, hasn't been good for him at all. But I think maybe part of that comes down to just, you know, the way the team was playing, it wasn't optimal for Shotzzy. But when you're dropping a 0.65 in a game mode, there's got to be some sort of, you know, element of personal responsibility that comes into play there, right? So, like, the team did okay. Those numbers don't look particularly pretty, but we know what Shotzzy's capable of, and he was an MVP candidate for the majority of this season up until pretty much the last couple of events. Scump, of course, played well, but honestly, I feel like Scump's best we saw him at this season was early on in the year, of course, on the SMG, he was dominant, but also on Gavutu hardpoint, right? We often saw that on Gavutu, Scump would pull out the third AR on that map and was pretty dominant with it. He actually had some of his best maps of the season with the AR on Gavutu, and he has said plenty of times in the past, Scump, that, like, look, he likes running the SMG, but whenever he picks up an AR, he's dominant, and he often actually has said in the past, like, look, he thinks he'd be a fantastic AR player in kind of a flex role. So Attach, of course, and TJ would, I suppose, be the two big examples of this season, but Attach, for example, in the past has been a similar to Scump type player, slightly slower, more kind of a, you know, pre-aim heavy, slay heavy SMG type player that can still work in this modern game, but honestly, with the pace of the game increasing every season, like, I think a lot of those kind of more traditional SMG, slower, pre-aim heavy type guys have maybe transitioned more into a bit of a flex role, right? Attach said this season he was playing the flex on Minnesota, or at times it almost felt like he was playing the main AR, and I imagine that's the role he's going to stay in going forwards as well. So could Scump be looking at a guy like Attach and seeing, like, the way his roles have changed over time and thinking, okay, actually, could I be a flex player on this OpTic team? Which would be crazy to think about, because Scump's been the best SMG player of all time, but I do wonder if he's thinking, okay, maybe me being on the flex is actually where this team could have the most success. I doubt it's going to happen, but maybe down the line it's a possibility, and if that was the case, then I guess aBeZy would have to make way or become the SMG, which I don't really like the idea of. Now, look, if Scump was to go to the flex role and aBeZy was to be gone, then you do lose a lot of that leadership aspect that aBeZy brings in, so you'd need to bring in an SMG player that could possibly provide that. And it is difficult to find guys like that out there unless you bring in a guy like an Asim or something, which would be a kind of interesting move, but I'm not really sure I like the idea of that team in the first place, so not really sure if there's SMGs out there that you could bring into the team that would not only provide the slaying, because you could try and go to Seattle and say, okay, look, we'll pay the absolute bag for Pred, and they'd be like, well, we want like, you know, $50 million, and OpTic would be like, okay, no, thank you. But I can see OpTic Pred happening way down the line in a few years' time, to be honest, just given the way things are going at the present time. So on the whole, I don't think there's the possible move out there to make it happen now, but I think that it's worth consideration as time progresses, right? Especially looking at some of these numbers. Money Hill Stats points out, if you guys haven't followed him already, feel free to do so. I'll leave these tweets links down below because he always drops some good ones just like this. But these are the kind of, well, control team rankings, for example. Look at this, right? OpTic starting out the season just so dominant in control, 90+% wins, so far much ahead of the rest of the field. They end up barely better than FaZe in control. Look at this win rate from Major 3 onwards, just absolutely collapses to the end of the season. And in the other game modes, it's not that much better. This is the Search and Destroy, up and down for OpTic. Really, they finish out with 62, actually the best S&D of the season, OpTic, but their hardpoint kind of fell off as well. You can see their hardpoint numbers here, 65, 70% win rate they held, pretty impressive. They fell down to the third best team in the game at 56.1% by the end of the year. There were, of course, various reasons for that. I don't think they should be changing up their team right now, but they've got to consider the possibilities of this team in the future if they don't work out well. This squad of 4 at the start of Modern Warfare 2, what is their next plan to take this team to where it should be as the super team that it was meant to be? So intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comment section below. Just to mention this as well, from Toronto, they kind of wondered which third game mode should we have in this game. We don't know yet what we're going to get. Please, no domination. Uplink, of course, with some trampolines or something would be absolutely fantastic. Probably it's going to be either control or CTF. I do wonder, because this COD might be a 2-year COD, as to whether we're going to get maybe control year 1 and then CTF year 2. That might be kind of interesting. We'll see what Infinity Ward come up with. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button. Tell us a YouTube god, this is a good video. I'd also like you should see it as well, and I grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.